Shabbat Shalom. Mazal Tov to Charlie and your family. So I've been reading this book. It's titled The Place of All Possibility. It's written by Rabbi Anina Dassa, a Northern California-based artist and rabbi. In it, she explores the rich connection between Torah and creativity. And one story especially stayed with me. She tells a story from her childhood about how she was taught to deal with problems when they arose. So the story is as follows. In my home growing up, the art studio was the biggest room in our house. As a kid, whenever I was faced with a problem I couldn't figure out, like a fight with a friend or a big decision, I would go to my mom, who also happened to be an art therapist, for guidance. After hearing what I was struggling with, she would take a deep breath and respond, "Well, have you made art about it yet?" As a preteen struggling with the problems that a preteen struggles with, this was not necessarily the answer Rabbi Allen was hoping for. But over time, she eventually discovered two resounding truths from her mother's advice. One, she says, the answers to my conundrums exist within myself. And two, that accessing creativity was a powerful way to discover what those answers might be. Some of you might know I taught an artist Beit Midrash class here at BJ that explored this phenomenon, the act of creating something not for the purpose of making a finished product, but for the purpose of unlocking a door to the subconscious, to new discoveries, to exercise the muscle of creativity. Rabbi Anina Dassa calls this the place of all possibility. One could also call it the midbar, the wilderness. Tomorrow night, we bring in the holiday of Shavuot, commemorating the receiving of the Torah. Fittingly, the Shabbat before Shavuot, we read Parashat Bemidbar, in the wilderness, the place where the Israelites receive the Torah. And so Bemidbar asks us to revisit this question: why is the wilderness the place where the Israelites received the Torah? This question is asked by Midrash Rabbah on the first line of our Parsha. It says, God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. Why the wilderness? The Midrash offers three beautiful metaphors for the medium in which God gave the Torah: through fire, through water, and through wilderness. The Midrash continues to flesh out each of these examples by providing a proof text from Tanakh. With fire, from where is it derived? We get a verse from Exodus: Mount Sinai was all smoke, because the Lord had descended upon it in fire. In water, where is it derived? As it is stated in Judges, indeed the heavens dripped, indeed the clouds dripped water. In the wilderness, where is it derived? It is stated in this verse that in the first line of Parashat Bemidbar, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. Fire, water, and wilderness. What do these three elements have in common? The Midrash answers, just as these are free for all mankind, so too matters of Torah are free. Ideally, water, fire, and wilderness are obtainable by everyone. They are ownerless. So too, the Torah was given in a place that was ownerless. And this interpretation says a lot about the accessibility of Torah. That Torah is not meant just for wise scholars, but for everyone of every ability and background. It is a beautiful image of a free world, a goal that we can reach for. If the Torah is meant to be free, then it is our duty to make it accessible to everyone. However, the Midrash does not stop there. There's another element that is required for being able to access Torah. The Midrash says, anyone who does not render oneself like the wilderness, hefker, accessible to all, is unable to acquire wisdom and the Torah. To truly receive Torah, we must make ourselves like the wilderness, open, vulnerable, willing to explore. It's not only about Torah being free for us, but about us being free enough, spacious enough to receive it. The Midrash is inviting us to think about the midbar as a metaphor, something that we can invoke as a value, something that we can try on, something that we can access ourselves. The Midrash is teaching us that if we want to receive wisdom of Torah, we need to access our own midbar, our own wilderness. So how do we do this? How do we access our own midbar? And how do we render ourselves ownerless? Let's look back at Rabbi Anina Dassa's story. After her mom would give her the advice to make art about it, this is what would happen next. She writes, I would look at the shelves of art materials, the shades of yellow, thick and buttery in the jar of paints, or the richness of the oil pastels. Pick one that sparked my energy for whatever reason, and without plan or goal, I would begin, as my mother encouraged me, by simply making marks on the page. At the beginning, making art almost felt like a waste of time. Why am I coloring? I would ask myself, when what I really needed was to solve whatever problem was plaguing me. While engaging in this practice, I found that as I became more connected to myself, my creations began to feel like companions. Over time, I began to feel the presence of something else there with me too. I didn't have words for it at the time, but looking back, I would describe it as feeling of flow, a sense that I was being supported by something I couldn't see or touch. Over a long winding and unwinding process, I have come to call this something God. I began to understand that to make art about it, as my mother would say, is not just to draw a picture, it is to draw down the divine into our midst. In this example, Rabbi Allen is using art making as a means to both enter the midbar and free herself up enough to receive the divine. Before I continue, I want to explain a little bit about process art, which is what Rabbi Anina has been describing in her example. So many people think about art making as something for the purpose of showing it or performing it or selling it, which is definitely part of it. But process art is stripping down these elements into a world of play that distinguishes it from typical art making. In this example, art making is a means to explore one's subconscious, to truly process challenges life throws our way. Process art focuses not on the final product, but on the act of creation itself. It is about curiosity, not mastery, exploration, not perfection. And process art is just one way of tapping into the midbar, but of course, it's not the only way. Accessing the midbar is about accessing one's own creativity. And I want to be clear, creativity is not a word exclusively reserved for artists. It is about accessing a laboratory, a state in which one processes big ideas, problems, challenges. It is a way to invoke the divine. Tapping into the midbar is the sacred mission of each and every one of us. So if not through actual art making, how can we invoke this state of mind? How can one both open themselves up to the ownerless place and make oneself ownerless? In Judaism, we invoke this midbar constantly. It is a tradition that encourages us to step into liminal spaces with rituals, holidays, traditions. An example that comes to mind most prominently is what we're doing here today. It is prayer. In the context of prayer, we give ourselves permission to think against our usual logical way of thinking. With prayer, we get to try things on. For me, prayer is a place where I can let go of the rational and let myself feel whatever way I need to towards God, even if I'm not exactly certain what that relationship looks like. Prayer is a place where I play. And there is something that comes with this play, this unknown. It is a double-edged sword. Entering into the midbar means entering a place of vulnerability. Playing out a thought or idea can be terrifying, especially if it's a thought we don't want to enter our consciousness. And if we look back at the Midrash, each element, fire, water, and wilderness, can be both life-giving and dangerous. Aviva Zornberg talks about this tension in her book, Bewilderments. She says, even desire and delight, it seems, have their terrors. The revelation at Sinai perhaps aroused in the people an unbearably complex experience of bliss and terror. The tragedy of the story of Bemidbar is that an entire generation of Israelites, the generation that received the Torah, did not get to leave the midbar. If we are looking at the midbar as a state of being, it is important to look at it as a state that we both enter and leave. It is a liminal space, one that we are not meant to dwell in forever. The scariness of the void, of this unknown, of not knowing exactly how to climb out, can get in the way of entering the midbar in the first place. However, I believe that especially in this world, it is our responsibility to go into the midbar, going in not knowing what we are going to receive or explore, what might come up, or when we'll be able to get out. For me, my time at BJ has been a midbar, a sacred laboratory where I've explored what it means to be a rabbi. This community has allowed me to try things on, to experiment with different ways of leading prayer and teaching and creating relationships. Like the midbar, it has held with it the element of give and take. I was only able to freely explore my rabbinic identity because of the freedom and graciousness that was given to me by this community. You have made this midbar free by giving me the space to make mistakes and by your constant support and warmth. And I believe that BJ is a midbar for many people as well. It is a space where we take a break from our ordinary and take time to connect with the divine. So I charge you with the sacred task to take those dives into the wilderness, not knowing what we'll discover or even how we'll find our way back. This Shabbat, this Shavuot, I invite you to invoke the midbar, whatever that means for you. Enter that place of vulnerability and possibility. Don't be afraid if it's messy or uncertain, because that's the point. Shabbat Shalom.